have a number of root-infecting pathogens, and in addition to soybean cyst nematode, which gets in the roots. And it's really important for growers to find out what diseases they have in their fields, because that's the first thing you need to be able to do the correct management or choose the correct cultivar for that field. Of course, we have Phytophthora root rot, which is associated with wet soils, and that can be a very serious problem, and especially now because we have a lot of new races that will attack the common resistance genes. We also have at least 3 to 4 different other fusarium species that infect roots, and they cause root rots. They don't cause the typical foliar symptoms that sudden death syndrome does, but they do cause root rots. And it's one of the major reasons that we always try to emphasize the importance of rotations to try to eliminate some of that inoculum in the soil. The more you grow soybeans year after year, the more you build up those root-infecting organisms. We also have brown stem rot, which is another soil fungus that infects the roots and causes a root rot and a stem rot. But this new disease now, the sudden death syndrome, if it spreads, it's going to become a dominant disease along with soybean cyst nematode, because we know that soybean cyst nematode and sudden death syndrome can go hand in hand. And there's good evidence that when you have both of them together, you get more damage from that disease. So it's really important that growers identify what they have in their field. Sudden death syndrome is a brand new disease for North Dakota. It's caused by the fungus Fusarium virguliforme, and it's known in many other states, but we had not seen it previously in North Dakota. We found it in a field in Richland County, actually in 5 different fields, and we identified it and verified it using molecular techniques and, of course, isolating the organism. And now we're trying to work on identifying sources of resistance so that the soybean breeder here at NDSU can put resistance into some of the germplasm. If you notice the plants on my left, these plants are healthy, they're quite robust. You notice the size of the leaves, big leaves. But if you look at the plant on my right side here, these plants are smaller, they're stunted, they have smaller leaves, they're generally not as robust. And these are infected with Fusarium virguliforme, and it gets into the root system, it causes a root rot, and eventually it will produce a toxin that comes up inside the plant, and it forms extremely unique foliar symptoms on the leaves later in the season. They can die depending on the level of infection and how susceptible they are. They can die. In the field where we found it in 2018, there were a lot of dead plants, and I think that some of the plants even died in the seedling stage because there was a large amount of inoculum in the soil. Generally, when you see it, it's in patches, especially when it starts off, because it has to spread over time. And entire fields can be affected, but I would say here in North Dakota now, especially since it's a new disease, that we're probably going to see it as patches of chlorosis, of yellow spots out in the field. And that's the first place I would look for it. The rotation will help reduce some of the inoculum in the soil. Right now, we don't have resistance in the cultivars that growers would normally purchase in this area because it hasn't been a problem. And I think that will change over the years as the private companies realize this is important, and the public breeder also will be putting in resistance. So right now, you need to first try to go into a rotation if you can, and at least several years of rotation to kind of try to minimize that amount of inoculum. And I do want to comment that the North Dakota Soybean Council is funding this research, and the funding is essential if we're going to make some headway. Especially, it's really important that we try to get resistance into the germplasm for North Dakota. That's going to be a critical component of our management strategy for sudden death syndrome.